Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to, maybe you can move little bit so that if people come late, they can easily move there. And just for everyone to know, there is a live recording. So if you sit on those two chairs, you are in the recording. Or if you get up in the middle of the talk, you will be in the recording. So if you don't want that, please walk past at the back. But if you don't mind, that's fine also. um, I'm seeing quite a few new people. Can I have an indication who is here for the first time? Okay, well, extra welcome. My name is Rona, and I'm part of the Brahma Kumaris since 20 plus years, meditating and studying and sharing what we learn here. And at this center about 3 years. And on Thursdays we have these sessions, these topics, lectures and introduction into meditation. So tonight's talk is on, is suffering optional? That is the title of tonight's talk. And there is lots of understanding of how our thinking affects our emotional state and also our physical condition. And so tonight we will explore a little bit how we can interfere in our thinking patterns, if we can, and how we could do that. If there are cyclical patterns of thinking that are negative, how can I shift that around? I'll use the board, so please sit in a way that you can easily see. So, when you think about suffering, what is it that you're thinking of? Any kind of thoughts come into the mind when you hear this word? This title is Emotion is Suffering Optional. What is it that you're thinking of when you hear that? Pain? Long-term pain, long-term pain. Regrets, suffering because of regrets. Why is it happening to me? Sadness. Why is it happening to me? Sadness. Attachments. Undesirable experiences. Guilt and shame. Regrets, guilt and shame. Anything else? Hopelessness. Anything else? When you think about suffering, nothing. Continuous thoughts. That in itself is suffering, the continuous thinking. Yeah, depends on the content of the thought. Huh? Death? Death is suffering. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Vandana, you were saying something? If it is someone else's that or just that in general. The idea of dying and death. Okay, good. Anyone else? not connecting to a higher power. Mhm. Not accepting what is. Mhm. Resisting, resisting the present moment. Okay. So, what can we do to shift those? If you're thinking about those things, sadness, death, regrets, shame, blame, resistance, one thing that is useful to observe within your own like inner world, in your cognitive apparatus, is that there are certain thoughts, and those thoughts are accompanied by certain things. Have you been able to observe that? You have certain thoughts, but they are accompanied by certain feelings and emotions. You have certain thoughts, and they are accompanied by certain attitude. If you have certain thoughts, then many times it is accompanied also by a certain atmosphere that you atmosphere atmos sorry a certain atmosphere that you create around yourself, certain vibrations that you create. Now, if someone is sad, you not only see it in his face, but you kind of feel it in the atmosphere. Certain vibrations is created, a certain energy field is there. If there are certain thoughts, it is very well possible that those kinds of thoughts also come in their words and in the actions. Yeah. So it is not just that we have thoughts and certain kinds of thoughts and that's it. Those thoughts also influence our feelings and our emotions. Those thoughts influence our attitude. Those thoughts influence the energy field that we create around us. Now, if those thoughts are negative, then it will have its repercussions here. If those thoughts are constructive or positive, it will also reflect here. Now, and all of this will also affect the way we interact in this world with others, the way we interact. It will also affect the personality. Is it like that? Yeah, the personality. But it will also affect the way we think ultimately and look at ourselves also. You have certain thoughts, you create certain feelings, certain attitudes, certain behavior patterns. And then when you look back, you think about yourself in a certain way that is reflected. So it becomes like a kind of cyclical and reinforcing pattern in itself. Can you see this? So it is not just a thought is there, and it is not just necessarily innocent. It affects many areas of your, if you think of your functioning also. Now, where do thoughts come from? if we have certain thoughts and they affect so much of our experiences, if they affect so much of our existence and our daily life, where do our thoughts come from? Or before we go there, you want to comment on anything of this or ask? Hmm? Well, when you're thinking too much, what happens? What you want to ask something about it? Is just a comment? Just a comment, okay. Mm-hmm. But you see this connection? This is understood that it is not just our thinking, because many times we have thoughts and we have a certain flow of thoughts, or we have a certain content of thoughts, and we just let it be. We just continue in the same direction, and we are not realizing the power and the influence and the effect of those thoughts on all these levels of our functioning. And so it is not just, oh, I just have a thought and that's it. No, it affects all these levels of your experiences and your thinking. Is the door upstairs open so that the AC can come in? Is the temperature here okay, or it's too warm or too cold? Hmm? It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, the body language also comes from it, but attitude is not necessarily body language. It's a thinking pattern, and it is a perspective that you have on certain things, and it comes from your thoughts and your thought patterns. That decides your how to say, your perspective. Hmm? Anyone else? So then I would put on the next question. Where do the thoughts come from? Inside, yes. But what are the roots of our thoughts? Maybe Vandana, can you put on the fan? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Memories. Very good. I'll just take out this so that we can go back to the. Just do the whole thing. Where do thoughts come from? Thoughts come from events, so something that is happening. Events in the present. In the present. So something is happening. So the fan is going off and you're having thought, oh, cool air. That is a stimulus for your thought. Thoughts come from your imagination. But your imagination itself is also kind of thoughts, no? Hmm? Someone was saying something here. Intellect is not necessarily the stimulus of your thoughts, but intellect, okay. Intellect is the function within us that chooses the thoughts. Yeah. So the thoughts definitely past experiences. Certain things happen in the past, and it brings thoughts back into my mind every time. So, say for example, I had a fight with my boss yesterday, and the whole night it's coming in my mind. Today in the mind, it comes back in the mind, and it creates thoughts. Yes. Someone there? Yeah. Your intuition is, it is a bit more part of the intellect. It is more the filter through which we allow certain thoughts or not. Hmm? Deep-rooted fears, but deep-rooted, I would put that more into past experiences. And past experiences may be conscious or not conscious, subconscious. And it definitely can be fear. A certain experience of fear from the past may just trigger certain thoughts. So say in the past, what you drank, what some, or you had some ice cream, and so you think, oh, I want ice cream again when it is hot. Or a dog had bitten you, so every time you see a dog, you think, oh, stay away here. Fear-based thoughts come from experiences from the past that can definitely happen. What else? Bodily sensations, yes, if there is itching and continuously itching, it creates thoughts, bodily sensations. And I would amplify that sensations or experiences. We see something and we create a thought. We hear something and we create thoughts. We taste something, we create thoughts. We smell something, we create thoughts. So there are actually three categories, big categories of areas that generate our thoughts. One is bodily sensations and sense experiences, what we see, what we hear. That is bit connected also with things that are happening in the present, that is generating your thoughts, or things from the past, creating your thoughts. And from the past, you can be conscious or you can be subconscious. Those are the areas that are creating your thoughts. Now, if you have cyclical thoughts, repetitive thoughts, how does that happen? And so once you have thought about a specific thing, that topic, those thoughts, have a little bit more power to come again, because you have allowed it to become conscious. You have allowed it to kind of take root in your mind. And because you have allowed it one time, it will become easier to think it again. next time. Hmm? You understand that? It becomes like you have thought it before and you had had certain feelings and experiences for whatever reason. So the next, it kind of becomes an impression and then again creates a thought. And so more often you think it, more often, more powerfully it can come again that you think it again. Is that understandable? The dreams is more in the more in the subconscious, and dreams is, well, anyway, we have thought a lot of different things, and all those thoughts, and if we have acted on that, all of that has created certain impressions in our subconscious. And during sleeping phase and dreaming phase, our active control is weakened. So all that what is in the subconscious, it kind of surfaces, and it can create all kind of combination of images and thoughts. But dreams we cannot really truly guide or control. But the conscious thoughts and the conscious feelings, that we can guide and control. So what can we conclude, or what could we say of this thinking? How do we create these cyclical patterns, and can we change cyclical patterns of thinking? See things with a different perspective. So because the whole theme is suffering optional. Now if suffering is a certain feeling, or it is a certain emotion, it is connected with our thinking patterns. Because whatever we're feeling and experiencing and emotions that we are having, there are thoughts and thought patterns behind those. Now, so if you want to shift emotions, then we would need to shift our thoughts. Understand that? That is... Right, no, one moment. She was having a question first. Very good. Very good. So if we are recognizing that there is a certain kind of suffering, if there is a certain kind of feelings that are unpleasant, and we want to not have those feelings, it means the thought patterns behind those feelings should shift. If we sow seeds and it gives certain fruit, and we don't like the fruit, then we have to sow different seeds. She's saying, so if the thoughts are the seeds of my feelings, then I should sow different seeds, different thoughts. Now, how to do that? Have you experienced this, that you have been having thoughts and thoughts and thoughts that you don't really want to? Does that happen in New York? So, Mm. Yeah. Yeah. They become habitual. Yeah. Very good. So this is, we know this of gross habits. Even gross habits are not so easy to break. You know, if you have a certain gross habit, and more you do those habits, they become stronger, isn't it? And then to shift it, longer you stay with a certain habit, you have to make a little bit more effort to come out of it. The first time you do something, it is easier to stop than the 10th time you have done it. So the same with your thinking also. If the first thought goes in a certain direction, it is easier to stop. The second time it is stronger. The third time it is stronger. The 100th time, you almost start thinking this is normal and I can't think any different anymore, because it has become such a ingrained tendency of thinking. But are we then destined to suffer? Mm. 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 Very good. Uh, um, it is interesting, no, this whole phenomena of suffering or joy. Just to give a little example of this, um, in some places, say in China, previously in certain villages, it still happens. When a baby is born, the village gets together and they cry. You know why? They get together and cry because in their belief system, in their perspective on life, this is the worst thing that can happen to anyone, to be born. No, really, really. So they cry because they feel this is something bad that has happened. Yeah, there are so many unpleasant things in this world. Someone new has come into this world to suffer. And so in New York City, there is a baby born. What do people do? They celebrate. So the same situation, in one belief system, it is a source of sadness. The same situation in another cultural context is a source of joy. So it is in itself, actually, it is not that situation, but it is our thinking about that situation that decides how we feel or not. Another example is in Nepal, when people, when someone dies, they have a party. Before, that was the tradition. Why? Yeah, they go on a, when someone dies, they celebrate that. Hmm? In New York City, we mourn and we are sad. So it is not the event in itself, but it is our belief system about the event. It is our thinking about the event. In the there, one time someone showed me an ad from a newspaper in England from 1830 or something. This is like almost 200 years ago. And the ad said, how to become fat. This was a advertisement for women to make themselves more beautiful. How to become fat. Because at that time, being fat was considered beautiful and healthy. Now our advertisements are because our belief systems and our thinking patterns are different, so we feel differently about things, same things. So in some cultures they extract the 2 teeth here. You know why? To make themselves look beautiful. In our culture, we paint the eyes, we paint the nails, and we paint lips. Why? Because we believe it makes us beautiful. No? So what I'm trying to say is, many times, not many times, actually all of the time, things that are happening, events that are happening, present or past events, what we think about it and how we feel, most importantly, is not so much based on the event in itself, but is based on our belief system about it, our interpretation of what is happening. And to give another more simple example, these roses, same roses, we are all seeing it, but everyone has different thoughts about them and different feelings. Now, if a painter is sitting there, an artist, he will look at it and say, oh, what is it? The color scheme and how the arrangement, and he will get feelings to paint. If there is what is it? A florist will think $40. A herbal doctor will think, oh, if I dry the petals and I mash it and I make a tea, it can be good for some whatever ailment. And if a botanist looks at it, he will give you some Latin name of the family of the flower that it belongs to and how these nerves and whatever. Also, same flowers, 4 different people having different thoughts and feelings about it according to their internal conditioning. And so the feeling, what many times happens is we want to change our feelings, or we want to change our emotions, or we want to feel differently, and we try to change the events externally. We try to, if somehow I feel this is not a good thing, I try to take away the roses. But how? But it is. Is it the roses itself that make me suffer, or is it my interpretations about it that makes me feel the way I feel? Someone might be crying because he thinks the last time I got roses, whatever, some bad meaning it has. And someone else will think about something else, the Valentine that did not go well. So it is my own internal conditioning that makes me feel the way I feel, not the rose in itself. Well, obviously, there are cultures where people are having a different perspective on death, and they don't see death as the ghost that we see it at. No, we will come to it a bit later on, but this is very useful to know, because even something like fear is determined by how what my belief system is about death. No, if it is like that, then why are there people who don't have that? Yeah. Yeah, because it may not be innate nature. It may have to do with perspective. We'll come to it, but is this understanding, is it bit clear that how I feel about something or someone or a situation is not necessarily dependent on that situation, but it is on my interpretation of that and my belief system of that, my perspective on that. So if I would like to shift the way I feel, then maybe I can experiment with a different way of looking at it. I don't know if you have ever, sometimes you judge a certain person because of the way they behave and you don't like it. But then you find out something about that person, and then your thoughts are changing and your feelings are changed. A friend of mine gave one time an example. Her boss was very private person, and so she did not know about his private life. And no one in the company knew about his private life. But at some stage, his behavior started changing. He became very critical, very judgmental, and always creating nasty comments. And work was never good enough. And that happened in the space of a year. His behavior changed, and it became very difficult for her to work under those circumstances. And somehow or the other, she found out that his wife is dying of cancer, and they have 3 children, and he is looking after her himself. So he's having a job, he's holding the company, he's looking after his wife at home, and he's keeping the children at home also, because he wants to keep the family as normal as possible for as long as possible. And he's doing all of that himself. Now, the moment she finds out, her vision of him changes. And she says, no wonder he is cranky, because he hardly ever sleeps. And her vision of, rejection, her vision of anger, her vision of, being annoyed with him changed into a vision of respect and an attitude of tolerance and patience. But he's still cranky and critical. He hardly sleeps, so he's overtired. But she now has a different attitude, because her thinking has shifted. Her perspective has broadened. Yeah. Yeah. She did not feel bad about herself. She just felt he is nasty. All of a sudden, he has become nasty. What's wrong with him? But I mean, it can be any scenario. But what I'm trying to illustrate is first she was feeling like that. And just because her perspective broadened, her feelings changed. And she was able to deal with his comments in a way that did not affect her negatively. And I'm sure some of us may have had that experience also. So every time we are in a certain emotional clamp, maybe that is optional to feel like that. And if we broaden our perspective, maybe our feelings can become different. And this is nice to experiment with because this means the way you feel is bit in your hand. Is this possible? And let us take the example that you are giving. Actually, two people are giving death. This phenomena of death and dying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Well, there are two things. No, one thing is to work preventively, which is always more useful to do like that. And that means you have to uh, um, be more aware of your thinking and guide your thinking when going is good. Because once you're in that, how would you call it, rant of thinking, um, it is more, it requires more strength to stop it. So it is more useful to create a more constructive trend of thinking generally when going is good, so that you're more in charge generally. And I forgot actually to mention the intellect. The intellect is a function within our inner world, you could say, is that function that discerns, is that function that analyzes, it is that function that chooses, is that function that decides the thoughts. So, for example, if there is this thought on, oh, this boss is always nasty, it is the intellect that can say, no, that is not true. Or it is the intellect that says, but of course he is in this condition. He hardly sleeps. He looks after his wife. He gets 1 or 2 hours sleep every night. Of course he is cranky. Let me be a bit more cooperative and tolerant and patient. So that is the function of the intellect, to rationalize the thoughts, to put them in a broader perspective. But our intellect can be strong or weak. If intellect is weak, then the thoughts take over and overrule. If the intellect is strong, then the thoughts are guided in a more constructive direction. Hmm? And so perspective, putting things in a broader perspective, that is also the function of the intellect. And intellect doesn't mean intellectual, or it doesn't mean IQ, but it means your common sense and your wisdom, your discerning power. Now, if the intellect is strong, it has that capacities to see a broader picture more easily. And if we come to this phenomena of death and dying, anyone here scared of death? Many people? No? Mm-hmm. That is part of the fear of death, part of the fear of loss. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's saying that is also part. Yeah? There is, it is a fear of loss. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And this is the part of the predicament of the limited thinking. Yeah. Yeah. This is part of the predicament in the many Western cultures. Now, this phenomena of death and dying, which is like a big monster and a big source of suffering and a big source of sadness, death of self and death of others. Because even if I say I am not scared to die, but we'll see when it comes. That is one thing. We truly. Second thing is, even if we're not scared of the final death, there might still be fear of how that process will be. No? One thing is the fear of death in itself, and the other thing is fear of pain or loss of independence, loss of dignity. All of those kind of things are connected to it. Now, in spiritual knowledge, there is this encouragement to see ourselves from a broader perspective and to take into consideration a larger perspective. And many times when we look at ourselves as a physical being. What we see in the mirror, that is what we think and consider ourselves to be. True or not true? So we use this word I for this, well, kind of. It can be male or it can be a female body. But we feel this is who I am. And then there are things that we collect and accumulate around us, our possessions or positions or education or the people around us or nationality and culture and religion and language, and we feel that is me, the physical personality. And this, all these things that I just described, they have one thing in common. You know what that is? The soul. Yeah, they pass. They're temporary. Now, position, possession, people, your pennies, and your education and background, all of those things, they start at a certain moment in time and they will end at a certain moment in time. True? This is an absolute truth. Has anyone been able to change this? No. Not the richest person, not the famous person, not the most powerful person, no emperor. Everyone is subjected to this. True? So this is like a law in nature. This is a law of the universe. Anything physical has a beginning and has an end. Is that true? This is nature. That is something else. That is something else. But everything here, so to resist nature, is that sensible? To resist something that is inevitable, is that sensible? No, it is not. Now, if it is not sensible, it means we need to look for other options. Because we cannot change this. And to resist something that you cannot change is not sensible. To suffer because of something that we cannot change, that is part of nature, it means we are masochists, because we will suffer, no? To try and change something that is not changeable, it is a waste of time at the very least. No? Mm. Yeah, no, we love, that is fine, but we not only love. Not just love is our nature, there are other things that are also our nature too. Peace is also part of our nature. Happiness is also part of our nature. Wisdom is also part of our nature. Yeah? Hmm? No, it is not. Because if it was, we would not suffer. So we focus not too much. We focus only on love. But maybe we should also focus on those other things and see a bigger perspective. This is what I'm trying to say. And maybe the object of our love is seen in a limited way. Now, if I tell you, here is a diamond, it is yours for 5 minutes, you will still love it, you will still appreciate it, but you will not get attached to it. Isn't it? Why? Because 5 minutes you can handle. You understand this is temporary. But is there theoretically a difference between 5 minutes and 5 years? It is still temporary. 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years. It is still temporary. But our intellect cannot hold 50 years. 5 minutes we can hold. But 50 years, we interpret internally as if it's going to be forever. Isn't it? It means wisdom is not evolved. The capacity to appreciate and to love, yes. But wisdom is not equally balanced. And there is a difference between love and attachment. You know what that difference is? If you put love plus selfishness, then it becomes attachment. So if you take out the selfishness, then there is love. Now, which one suffers? The love or the selfishness suffers? So, can we broaden this perspective in a way that we can handle the temporariness of this without needing to suffer? Big ask. Well, this is where spiritual knowledge comes in. Raj Yoga knowledge says, and if we experiment with that, you can get more experiences in that way. That this is not the total person, and maybe even not the real person. Maybe the real person is the inner being, and we use this image of light, a being of light, point. The being of consciousness, or soul, or inner being, or spirit, there are many names for this being. And even the word human being has that part, being. The human is this, but the being, the inner being, the being that has thoughts and feelings, the being that has memories and impressions, that being is not physical. What is physical is the body. What is physical is clothes. What is physical are the objects around. That is physical. But the soul you cannot see. My thoughts you cannot see, but they are there. They are very real. Now, reason also tells us that the end, the beginning and the end of the body does not need to be the beginning nor the end of the soul, the inner being. Yeah, definitely can be. But at very least, the end of the body does not need to be the end of the soul. It's like you go into a car, and when the car gets old, doesn't function anymore, what you do? You change the car. Or at least you do away with the old one. But the end of the car doesn't mean the end of the driver. So in the same way, the soul is like the driver of the body. Body is the vehicle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is a bit further, but one of the ways to find tangible support for this understanding is children who have extremely vivid and researched memories of past lives. So there is a part of us, and in spirituality we say actually that is the real person, the being of consciousness that transcends the limitations of the physical. Now, if I can look at it like this, and this becomes more ingrained into my thinking pattern and my perspective, then the death of the physical body is just like a car that has become old. But the driver, the chauffeur, continues on. Now, do you cry when the car gets old? When you get a new car, you're actually happy, no? Now, if we can manage to shift our perspective, then our thoughts and feelings about this process will change. And then things will be different. Then there's, first of all, the real person doesn't die, hasn't died. And do I love the car or do I love the driver? That is another aspect of truly loving. Am I understanding who it is that I'm loving? Who is loving and who am I loving? Am I loving the car or am I loving the driver? And if a car has come to the end of its, how do you call that? Usable, what? Useful life, or its expiry date. Is it bad that it is left behind? And the soul moves on its journey. If we can get our heart to be bigger and our perspective to be broader, we might actually be feeling this is a good thing. One chapter of the journey is closed and another chapter opens, and wish that one well on their onward journey. If we truly love, then we would have good wishes and good feelings for the one who is going on the journey to another experience. Then there is no need to be sad. Actually, when someone you love goes on a holiday, goes to Europe, what do? You cry? You're happy for them, no? You love, and you send them off with good wishes. So maybe we could also do that in this. Well, this is part of our conditioned thinking. Even to say it is not easy is part of our conditioned thinking. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but why do I need to conform to certain conditioned patterns of thinking? If there is another perspective that helps me have more positive feelings, maybe I should try it. But what the thing is it is not collective thinking. I might think this is a nice idea, but if you go out, you can't talk about this because they will think something cuckoo with you. So we are under the pressure of social, social conditionings, yeah. We are raised in society, in certain cultures, in certain structures where certain belief systems are dominant, and we are as if part of the herd in the way we think also. But just because everybody thinks like that does not necessarily makes it true, and also it doesn't make it sensible. If I can think differently and thereby have feelings that are more healthy, isn't that more sensible? Yeah. Excellent. It will be natural. If there is self-knowledge first, also, it is not just self-love, it is self-knowledge, because first we have to truly know self before we can truly love self. And once self-knowledge and self-love is there, that will naturally be your attitude towards others also. Because you will see their truth the way you see your own truth. Mm. 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 We need little courage. Because this is what there may be fear of what will they think of me, what will they say of me. And they will. They will say things about you, they will think certain things about you. And that is where we need courage and a little extra sense. I'll tell a story. You like stories? This is a story of Nasruddin. Nasruddin is a character in the Middle East. And he's shown as a wise man, a mullah, but he is also a little bit, what? No, not soft, senseless sometimes, a bit dumb. But in his senselessness, there is some wisdom. Anyway, so Nasruddin one day, he had a donkey, and so he had to sell the donkey. So he takes his grandson, and they go on their way to the marketplace to sell the donkey. But in those cultures, they have street philosophers. So they gather, they play some game, and anyone who pass by, they give free philosophical advice. Yes, philosophers of life. So Nasruddin has to pass by some group of philosophers who are playing some game. And they say to him, Nasruddin, what's wrong with you? You have a donkey and you're walking. What is this? This is not very intelligent in this hot sun. So Nasruddin says, oh, these people are clever. So he climbs on the donkey and they go. But next corner is another group of philosophers who give free advice. Also. And they say, Nasruddin, what is this? In this hot sun, and this poor grandson, he has to walk in this hot sun and you comfortably on the donkey. What is wrong with you? So Nasruddin said, these people are right. So he comes off the donkey, he puts his grandson on the donkey, and they continue. They continue. So another group of philosophers on the next corner, and they say, what is this, Nasruddin? You are not teaching the youth respect for the elderly. Your grandson sitting comfortably on the donkey and you having to walk. What is this? So Nasruddin said, these people are right. So he climbs on the donkey too. So grandson and Nasruddin on the donkey off to the market. But they have to pass one more corner with one more group of philosophers. And they say, Nasruddin, what is this? You are abusing this poor donkey. His belly is on the ground and both of you comfortably on his back. What is this? So now Nasruddin is fed up. They come off the donkey. He says to his grandson, you take the front legs, I will take the hind legs of the donkey, and we carry the donkey to the marketplace. And this donkey fighting, resisting. I like this story because it reminds me of how human society is. You do this, there will be 10 people who tell you, what is this? You don't do it, there will be another 10 people telling you, what is this? You do something completely different, there will be another 10 people telling you, what is this? No matter what you do, there will always be. So, no comments on you. That is also part of something you cannot change. No matter how hard you do, no hard you try, there will be always someone commenting something, saying. So what you do? You find out what works for you. And you cherish that. Doesn't mean you cannot listen to learn. but don't give up something that you understand. And this is also why it is useful to not think and live superficially. Now, whatever you think, whatever your values, whatever your belief systems, whatever your what is it, your explorations, your reflections are, build them carefully and test them also, because once you have experienced certain things, then you are sure, and then people can say all kind of things. No, and it doesn't mean that if people are mourning that you go stand there and laugh. I mean, you don't need to be what is it? Inappropriate behavior, but it doesn't mean that you internally have to be sad and mourning. And if you are holding it together, if you are calm, then you can become a support for others. But if you also lose it, then now there are more people sad. The problem is just bigger. But it requires a certain courage. Now there is a saying within the Brahma Kumaris, are you a lion or are you a sheep? You know, sheep, well, in New York City we don't have sheep, but sheep are very disciplined animal of the herd. And so if one of the herd goes in one direction, the whole herd goes. If one goes into the slaughterhouse, all of them go into the slaughterhouse. They don't think. Once one goes, the whole bunch goes. A lion is not like that. A lion can live in the group comfortably and well. But if the group does something against whatever, lion or lioness, they no problem living alone. Until they catch themselves, then join again. So are you a lion or are we a lion or are we sheep? And not to be a lion just to be a rebel, but to be sensible, to be able to cooperate and live in the group, but not lose your intelligence and your sense. Yeah, 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 yeah. Very good. But so, is suffering optional? The answer would be yes. And the message of tonight is, if there is certain pain or sadness or discomfort, what maybe we need to do is to see the bigger picture and learn the lesson. Maybe we need to learn lessons, and we are not seeing a big enough picture to learn the lesson. Now, like for example, if there is fire, and we are fascinated by that fire, and we want to touch it, what will happen? Before you get burned, what will happen? Yes, and then pain. Yeah. Now, is that pain and discomfort there to make your life miserable? Exactly. So there is a message in pain. There is a message in suffering. There is a message in discomfort. And if we don't see that message, it's maybe because we're not seeing the bigger picture. Because fire is not meant to create human suffering, but we need to use it properly and use it well. If I keep this body at a distance of fire, then it creates comfortable heat. You can use it to boil water. You can do many things with it if you use it properly. But if you want to touch it, It's not meant for that. It means we are not understanding the law there. And so if we uh, take that understanding for other situations also, for example, the death of the body, if we are experiencing pain, then maybe it is because we are not understanding nature. And we need to reposition ourselves and change our approach to that. And there are many different things. Relationships is another area where many people have many kind of emotional, unpleasant feelings. Maybe we need to reposition ourselves and see relationships differently. And enter into relations with a different mentality and a different consciousness. Maybe that is what it is telling us. But I can also think, okay, this is part of life and pain is part of it and I'm destined to suffer. Then I won't do anything. And that many times happened. We think stress is normal, we think suffering is normal. Someone says, what is this thing? Love hurts. Well, if it hurts, then thank you very much. I don't want anything of it. I don't need it. But we, as if we cross a border and then it becomes normal. We cross a border and then it becomes acceptable. And then we make it the norm. And then again another border, and we don't need to. We can also step back and say, is there something bigger I need to see or learn? So, yes, it is, you have the power to choose, to see things differently and thereby feel differently. But it requires attention. It requires sharpening of the intellect. It requires reflection. It requires exposure to spiritual knowledge. And introduce different ways of seeing the same phenomena differently. And explore how you feel. Does it make sense? But of course there is the social norm. And for that you need to be a lion. Not a sheep. Or maybe we are sheep, but we can change into lions. Step outside of the comfort zone and discover. I'll close with another story. There is a story of a man who fell off a cliff and he holds on to some branches sticking out of the cliff. So he's dangling there, dangling, crying, help, help, somebody there, help, 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 but no one answering. And he is an atheist. So he continued to cry out for help, but nobody listening. So one thought comes, maybe I should try God. So he, well, I cannot lose anything. So he said, God, if you help me, I will believe in you from now on. And I'll pray every day. No answer. And he says, God, didn't you hear me? Help me. and I will become very faithful believer. And then God says to him, "Are you sure?" So he almost let go out of fear and surprise. He says, "Yes, yes, if you help me truly, I will become a believer." And God says to him, "But you will have to do what I tell you." He says, "Yes, yes, anything you tell me, I will do." And God says to him, "Okay, sure? Yes, yes." God says, "Let go of the branches." So he says, "Isn't there anyone else?" Okay. So, but there's no one else, so he has to do what God says. So he let go of the branches, one finger, another finger, another finger, another finger. And he falls 2 meters and he's on the ground. And this is little bit our life. We are so scared to change. But what can truly happen? And once he's on the ground, he's out of the panic mode. And now he plays with the branches, he can walk around, he appreciates the cliff. But when he was holding on to the branches in the panic mode, he couldn't appreciate anything. He couldn't even properly see that ground was right there. And this is what happens with our cyclical thinking pattern. We hold on to certain belief systems so much that we don't see that the ground is right there. You're so scared to let go. And in holding on, we stay in the prison, we stay in jail. We stay in our cyclical thinking and our negativity. Just try. Okay, so let's close with a few minutes of silence. Just take a deep breath. And become aware of your existence here, your presence here in this room. Become aware of the body, the breathing, and accept the noise. Whatever, someone goes, someone comes, fine, just accept. But calm down internally. And just reflect on this thought. There is this body, the vehicle. And there is the inner being, the one who is creating thoughts and feelings. A non-physical, subtle being of light. The soul. One who transcends the beginning and end of this body. One who transcends the limitations of matter. The real self. The soul. I am a being of light. Timeless, pure, peaceful. Soul. And this body is the vehicle I am a being of light, a being of consciousness, a timeless traveler. And this body is temporarily a vehicle. And the soul is located in the center of the forehead, behind the eyes, like a tiny star, pure, silent, eternal, being of light. And as we come to the end of this meditation experiment, we aim to stay with this awareness, stay with these thoughts and feelings, and reflect on the understanding of the self as non-physical, timeless, a traveler. And I also reflect on this power of choice, to think that I have a choice of what I think, that there is a choice in which perspective to use. And that perspective that helps me create healthy feelings, that perspective may be closer to truth. Thank you. Thank you. We've a little bit gone over the time, but there is sisters at the back will offer you some sweet before you go. And those who are not receiving our emails, they can, if they would want to, with the program, you can leave your email, and then every month you will get the month's program. But also on our Facebook page, these lectures are being recorded, so if you have interest to look at them again or listen again, you can go on the Facebook page and listen to it again. The September program is also out, so you can have a look at it on the desk. And there is a special workshop on a Saturday in September, I think the 21st, but in September, on a Saturday, there's a special workshop for healthcare professionals. So if you fall in that category, you're most welcome and invited, or if you know anyone, most welcome. Okay, thank you. And maybe we'll meet again